Hi guys, welcome to the Fife Property Show. It's live and it's for you. You can ask questions live as you can, and we go into QVT. Hi guys, welcome to the Fife Property Show. Today we're going to be talking about unemployment. Unemployment has hit 6.3% in Fife, 6.3% right across the UK. 12 months ago, it was sitting at 3.7% in the Fife area, and basically round about that area across the UK as well. So where does that take us in terms of the property market in general for 2021? And then where does it take us in the local market in Fife? So I've got some guests here today. I've got Richard Cook is joining us today. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Morning, Jim. Good. How are you?
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Jimmy Mullen.
Morning, all.
And we've got Kesar. Kesar is actually a mortgage broker. Yeah, you have your own company, Kesar, and you're going to talk about the implications about how it'll affect mortgages and banks as well. But first of all, guys, have you had a good Christmas and New Year?
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Yeah.
You sound enthusiastic.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. We were just speaking before we come on there, Jim, about obviously how busy things have been in the background, and keeping in contact with the clients and things. And a lot of them are surprised that we're still operating because obviously offices and things are closed, but we're always doing things in the background. So
it's been busy over Christmas and New Year. I'll tell you. I mean, I've had 3 offers. I got one of the as well. On Hogmanay, basically. I had 3 offers. One was rejected on one of the houses. One was actually, yep, get your mortgage sorted out and we've got a deal. And the other one was accepted on New Year's Day. Sold New Year's Day. And really, it shows me you're either as busy or as quiet as you really want to be. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Is that what you find it as well, guys?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before, just after, I think it was the 27th, 28th, we had viewings at a couple of properties. Luckily, there was a solicitor open for both of them to get their offers in as well. So marketed a couple of properties, one in Cooper, one in Thornton, has sold over that time period as well. Obviously, you had 3 offers yesterday, Jim, for properties in Leven, but we also had a couple of offers for properties, other properties which are currently still getting negotiated right now. As well, and obviously there's other viewings taking place which might maybe develop into something more in the future as well.
Huge amount of activity in East Nuke, isn't there? Still, you know, huge demand.
Absolutely, Jim. Yeah, like what you said as well. That, you know, you can be as busy as quiet as you want to be. So we were super busy as well all the way through the Christmas period. Lenders have been open too, so you know they do work in the interim period as well. So we've had mortgage offers come through. And I think people are reflecting on kind of the current year and looking to the year ahead, and property is a big part of that, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good morning, Charlotte. How are you? Good morning, Andrea. Thanks for watching. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. I'll take a look at the statistics because you know me, I'm an accountant by trade. I seem to be a bit of a statistician. I get carried away with the numbers and everything like that. But it's key is fundamentally to show where we're going with things. So I'm going to look at our website. And this is our website statistics for the month of December. Now, it's December 2019 versus December 2020. And I'll take you through that just now. And I'll just take you through some of these scenarios. So there's the wee dotted line at the bottom there. Now, that's 2019 activity in December last year. And then there is the thick line, which represents the activity for December just past. Now, there's a huge difference in terms of the activity. And we'd always talked about the Boxing Day bounce. So you can see the Xmas Day there, the Christmas Day, where it dropped and everybody, you know, doesn't look. And then all of a sudden, the Boxing Day bounce comes in. But it's hugely significant in terms of what it was last year. Because look where it is. I mean, 1,000 people a day going onto the website and actually looking for there. And look at last year's. You were sitting round about just below that, round about 750 a day on the Boxing Day bounce. So it shows me there's still really fantastic demand there. And then we get New Year's Day, which drops. But New Year's Day is sitting about 700 people. on New Year's Day looking on our website, but look at it in comparison to what it was the year before. You're only talking about 300 the year before that. So we've still got more than double the amount of people looking for property and looking at property websites at this time of year. I mean, is this quite reflective then of what's going on, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think if we just go back to what we just said here, I'm just looking at it now. So we had 5 offers over the last couple of days, and obviously we sold a couple of properties on the 27th, 28th. So 7 properties potentially sold in the last 5 days.
Yeah.
It just shows you, obviously, a lot of people are closed now, and a lot of people are thinking, you're not open, and they're not inquiring. Ultimately, they're missing out. So as soon as it starts again, should I say, they're going to be like, oh, where's that property gone? I thought you'd be closed. And then all of a sudden comes back to square one. There's not enough stock available. So
Yeah.
prices are still going to go up, or everybody's going to compete in for the same things.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if this is it. If you've got this in front of you, and you can utilise this to its full potential. I mean, this is your television, your multimedia platform, and everything else what you want. Your point of contact for everything. Your email, your. I mean, have you found that as well, Kessa?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even had inquiries on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, stuff like that. You know, people, don't expect you to close off at any point. You know, people want you to be in contact at all points. I think because we've been in so much uncertainty this year as well. People are, realizing that COVID's still going to be around as well. And obviously, we're just going through Brexit, so and things maybe aren't as bad as people thought they were going to be. So I think that maybe is one of the reasons why the figures are higher this year as well.
But you would think with all this activity and then the prospect of unemployment hitting, it's hit 6.3%. You would think there would be some sort of curtail, there'd be some sort of slowdown, and people would actually take stock and think, wait a minute, I better put the brakes on this. But that doesn't seem to be coming to fruition. I mean, Richard, have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, like we've spoke about in previous shows about obviously speculating and trying to work out what's going to happen in the future. And I think that as we've seen, evidently, that's not always the case about how people have thought things are going to pan out. And I think there is this urge for people to get property on the market, and that's what we need to continue, because if we don't, then obviously the demand is just going to far outweigh the supply that's on the market. And I think that's what we didn't want to happen, because
Absolutely,
the buyers and things are saturating the market just now, and that's what we're trying to level out. So.
Need more stock. That's what it really comes down to. More people need to think about, if you're thinking about moving, now is probably the time to actually really seriously consider I'm going to do it now. But I mean, for me personally, I always think extrapolating and thinking about later on and thinking I'll wait till summer or I'll wait till spring or anything like that seems to be for me in this sort of economy and the way we are now is a bit of a gamble, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to speculate. If the price is right for you at this point in time to get out and actually move on to another property, then that's when you do the deal. I mean, Warren Buffett talks about a lot of times, he never looks for peak of the market when he sells a share. And when he buys a share, he tends to buy it when everybody's coming down and everybody's running. So he does the opposite ways. And it works for him perfectly. And if it works for a multi-billionaire, would it not work for me? Anyway, let's get into the article. So 12 months ago, the unemployment rate stood at 3.7% in Fife of the working population. Yet with coronavirus hitting the UK, what impact will this rise in unemployment have on the Fife property market and the UK property market in general, and in the Scottish market? As I've discussed a number of times in my articles for the Fife property market, this summer has seen the Fife property market do exactly the opposite of what was expected in COVID when it hit. So the stamp duty holiday has clearly added fuel to the pent-up demand for people to move to property with extra rooms, obviously to work from home, and gardens as well. Everybody's seen the benefit of now having a garden, especially if you can't go out your front gate when we were in lockdown. This has prompted the brief hiatus in the number of people selling and buying homes over the last summer and the autumn itself. Yet insecurity around rising unemployment has led to many mortgage companies becoming more cautious in the later months of the summer, predominantly when lending to self-employed and first-time buyers borrowing more than 85% of the value of the home, as they wouldn't want to lend to someone who could not afford the mortgage due to an insecure income are not having a job. What have you found with that, Kessa? Is that been the case?
Yeah, it is the case. I mean, but it's not as bad as it sounds. So, I mean, at the beginning of COVID, when we initially went into lockdown, lenders kind of stopped lending almost completely, and then restricted loan to values to kind of around 60%. But we've seen a lot of lenders come back to kind of 85%. But just over the last month or so, a lot of lenders are back to around 90%. And this is mainstream sort of high street lenders that are back to sort of 90% loan to value. So, which is great news, especially for first time buyers and the likes with kind of lower deposits. There is, a little bit more scrutiny when it comes to kind of your job and kind of the future prospects that you have in that. So if you are currently furloughed, lenders potentially won't lend to you just now. They want to see you coming off furlough before you are eligible for lending. So that's for employed positions. Self-employed, people, a lot of lenders are just taking a view on that. It depends what industry you're in. If you're in an industry that are affected, by the current sort of tier system, and you're not able to trade, lenders will want to see your bank statements to see is there income coming in. So, potentially if you're a landlord or something like that, you might not be able to get lending. But if you're in another trade and you're operating as normal, you should be absolutely fine. So there's not a massive amount of restrictions just now, to be honest.
Yeah, and Andrea says something there. Is there going to be another mortgage holiday? This is quite interesting. If furlough is going to be extended, or are we going to see an influx of repossessions? Cheery this morning, Andrea.
Yeah, so on that, Andrea, I mean, the government's already announced that if you've not already taken extension on your mortgage, you can, take that extension up to, I think it's 6 months now that you can take that. So that is available to you. Any further than that, there's not been any announcements yet. Obviously, the furlough scheme's extended all the way to April now. I suppose we'd have to kind of see in the new year if the government's going to plan to extend any mortgage holidays after that.
Do we think that furlough is going to be extended again? Hands up.
Yeah, I do.
I think that's a dead cert. There's no way the government's going to just put all this investment and all that money into it, and then suddenly come March, it's like, well, or April now, let's let it drop to the ground and we'll just forget about it. What's your thoughts on that, Richard?
Yeah, no, I do think the furlough scheme is going to be extended. I think it's going to have to be as well. Like you say, they've invested quite a lot in it, and I don't see the situation drastically changing where people are going to be up right back into employment from furlough anyway. So I think it's going to need to be extended.
It was quite interesting when you said, Kessa, that the banks are no longer lending on furloughed income, because is that's a wee bit of change what it was last summer. Were they doing that last summer, but now they're no longer doing that.
Yeah. So I mean, it depends by case basis, but yeah, they have tightened up the criteria in regards to furlough. Pretty much all the lenders are wanting you to be back off furlough before you're able to get lending. Right at the beginning, they were actually lending if you was on furloughed income, either at the furloughed pay or some employers were actually paying 100% pay, so you was able to get the lending on your 100% income as well. So that has changed.
Mm-hmm. That's quite a significant change. Do you think that's to do with liquidity then? They're a bit nervous.
Yeah, definitely. Because obviously, we've had an extension up till April now, but there's not any plans as of yet to kind of extend it any further. So the lenders are just kind of bracing themselves, really, and just trying to protect the clients as well, for their own sake, before they get lending, to make sure that they are back on secure income again.
That's the key word, though, protect the clients, because you know what's happened before. Basically, they've said, well, you failed to protect the client, therefore you're liable for leaving them high and dry without actually going through the proper procedures to make sure they were able to lend, if that makes sense. I mean, that's happened in the past, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's really tricky for lenders just now because obviously they do want to lend. The money is there. A lot of the easing that we had, quantitative easing that we had, has been given to the bank. So the liquidity is there from the bank's point of view. But like I said, they need to be careful that it's not kind of a run of sort of 2008 again. But they've got to kind of balance that against people actually wanting to kind of buy properties and get lending as well. So it's a tricky balance.
Yeah, I mean, back in the late spring, economists were predicting the UK unemployment would rise to a peak of 6.5% in Q3, which is just passed, returning back to the 2019 levels at 3.4% by the year 2022. Yet, as we speak in Christmas, basically just now, nationally, the unemployment level stands at 6.3, the toll COVID has had on people's livelihoods has been massive when you think about it, with an additional 1.4 million people out of work. Although it's important to note that the unemployment rate is still lower than 5 years following before the credit crunch itself in 2008 and to 2013. So, it's still lower than what it was there. So I think we don't need to worry too much. I mean, what's your thoughts, Jimmy?
Well, I think people talking about unemployment rates and property prices, I think it's all good knowing the numbers about how many people are unemployed, a percentage, but how many percent of those people are actually going to be in the market to buy a property and affect the house prices? Ultimately, right now, I can't speak for people losing their jobs, but I'm just assuming that it'll be people that are sort of on a part-time basis that are maybe picking up weekend work when they're closed now that are more than likely losing their jobs. And I don't want to stipulate, but they probably might not be in a market to buy a home. They might be in rented. So I think you need to look at the percentage of people that are actually losing their jobs. Are they actually in the market or actually own a home to affect the property prices? Because no one really knows that number. So
that's a good point, Jimmy. That's a real good point.
Assuming that's going to affect the prices is neither here or there, because you can't actually know that number.
Yeah, really good point. So with such a growth in unemployment and the spectre of a no-deal Brexit, well, we know we've got some sort of deal. Whether that's, I'm not really sure. Small print has to be defined yet. This will hold back the enthusiasm of many companies to take on more staff, reducing any rebound in employment when you think about it. If unemployment remains high, this will influence perceptions of employment and personal household financial security, which the ultimate drivers are both for house prices and whether people buy or sell. So that's really what drives the market. It's consumer sentiment, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and we've spoken about this before, and I think obviously unemployment rate has jumped up a bit, and there is certain sectors of the businesses and things that are affected by it a lot more than others. I think, but there's a lot more that are kind of capitalising on it just now, and they're growing more than others, obviously just due to the circumstances. So I think it swings and roundabouts, and like you just touched on, and it says in the article, unemployment rates still aren't as high as what they were on the back end, obviously the credit crunch before.
Yeah,
so.
Kevser, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I agree with exactly what you've all said there, especially Jimmy and Richard just there. Absolutely. I think, if there's going to be potential market there of people that can't buy, especially on the lower end. So, there might be higher demand for rental properties. And I deal with quite a lot of property investors. And like what Richard just said there, as much as there's some people that have been affected due to COVID, there's a lot of people that actually have a lot of money just now because they're not able to spend, go on holidays and, have that additional expenditure. And also people reflecting on life and thinking, I want an additional income now. Maybe I don't want to work as much as I was before. I enjoy working from home, or maybe I want to move into kind of a more rural area and, have a bit more peaceful life. So we're actually kind of seeing a lot of people looking to have an additional property as an, additional source of income as well.
Yeah,
I think that's quite important. Richard, have you seen that sort of as well?
Yeah,
obviously interest rates at a record low. Interest rates are non-existent when you think about it. So clearly, have you seen that come out in terms of the buy-to-let and a number of inquiries from investors?
Yeah, we definitely have. I'm dealing with so much different investors at the minute. We've got money in the bank. And there has been a big shift in people's attitude towards their own life and their own circumstances and where they want to be, and whether that be in work or in personal life and things. And like you say, obviously additional homes or even relocating from certain areas. We've seen that, obviously, people picking up properties in East Nuke and things as well. And throughout.
Yeah, I mean, you could see a typical. Well, let's look at a typical profile. A flat in the Leavenmouth area. I mean, a flat in the Leavenmouth area would cost you £60,000 or thereabouts. What would the rental value be on that?
You're round about the 450 to 500 mark for a 2-bedroom flat.
Yeah. And what would a 75% loan to value mortgage be on that, Kessler? Round about. Ballpark.
Yeah, Jimmy, it would be under £100 a month for interest only, so very, very low.
Only under £100 a month. So you've got £450 rent coming in. You've got a 75% loan to value mortgage, which is about under £100 a month. You're clearing £350 to pay for things like repairs, improvements, and your management fee. So effectively, your management fee would be what, Richard? Round about £50, £60?
No, about £55 or so.
Yeah, 55. Well, splitting hairs. £55, 15 pence. £60 then. So £60 or thereabouts. So when you think about it, you're still clearing a significant amount of money after that's done, and all you've invested is 25% of 60 grand, which is 15 grand. And then you've got 2% ADS, 4% ADS, sorry. So you've got 4% ADS on 60, which is 2,400. So there's 15 and 2,400. You've got 1,000 probably for your solicitor to actually do the conveyancing. So you're investing the best part of £18,000, and you're getting a return every single month, net return of just probably about 250 in cash. That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good. That's just under £3,000 a year when you think about it in terms of net return. So net return £3,000 a year, and you've invested 18 grand. I'll take that return any day.
I think you need to think as well, Jim. If you're buying a property that's ready to go and you're getting a management agent to do it, don't forget you're doing no work there. You're just laying down the money, and there's someone else that's taking care of it for you, and you're just
passive income, isn't it? It's definitely passive income. I mean, that's really what everybody wants, the passive income. And it's that additional, it's what you said, Kessar, it's that additional security that people have going alongside of what they're doing normally just now, in order to just say, look, I could take a step back from a full-time job. I could maybe do something part-time. I could maybe have a number of part-time positions, but I could also have this in the background, just as a security, just to make sure I'm okay. Because I tell you what, I'm not earning anything in the bank at all. So I may as well take my money and put it into buy-to-let. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, let's look at the buy-to-let market, Richard. Is the buy-to-let market still booming?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
What gives you the indicators that this buy-to-let market is still booming?
Well, like I say, obviously, I'm dealing with quite a lot of buy-to-let investors just now, existing buy-to-let investors who are building their portfolio, and I've also got a lot of new ones coming into the market. I mean, obviously, COVID and things did have an effect on some landlords, and unfortunately, some of them are exiting the market. And not always due to COVID. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that always influence that. But there's a lot of activity with new people coming through, and obviously that's obviously driving through on house sales and things as well. So yeah, there's a lot of business there.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot, and Kessar's seen that, Jimmy's seen that, I've seen that. I mean, Jimmy, we've got a property possibly coming to market in Cooper, and there's an offer being made on it already before it's even got to the market, because it's a prime buy-to-let property. And often we've found out recently that we're getting offers, and actually we're selling houses before they even actually get on the market. And that's coming through quite prevalent. So we've never actually seen that before where that's happened.
Yeah, I had an offer from an investor for a buy-to-let property that we're selling actually on New Year's Eve. So I'm dealing with that one just now as well. So
makes absolute sense. I mean, I'm even looking at it myself. I've made 2 or 3 offers so far on properties, and this is now the time to get into buy-to-let, I would say personally. But you could, hey, success leaves clues at the end of the day. So let's look at the numbers in terms of how many people were unemployed last year as opposed to how many people this year. In terms of the Fife region, we'll actually cover Dundee, Kessa, because I've got the numbers here, all the statistics. Okay. So 8,575 people were unemployed a year ago in the Fife area. Today, that stands at just over 14,500 people. So that's what represents that fundamental shift. In terms of the Dundee area, you know, when we're looking at Dundee City, 4,500 at 4.5% a year ago, and that is now sitting at 7,000, which is 7.1% in terms of that. So it's a wee bit above the national average. But again, we'll come back to saying all indicators are still there. The effect on the housing market doesn't seem to be coming through yet. Scotland overall is 110,250 were unemployed a year ago, and now it's 210,000, just over 210,000, which is 6% in Scotland. So a wee bit below the national average. So where does that take us then, and where do we stand? So looking at the study papers on the topic, there are links between unemployment. Are there links between unemployment and house prices? Yet it's not as strong as you would think that the links are. The large factors are the demand and the supply of property on the market and interest rates. Interestingly, there are 2 past recessions that comparatively richer regions of London and South East, house prices have been more sensitive to unemployment and house price changes than the rest of the UK. Yet London and the South East have also bounced back quicker and higher after 2 recessions. You know, I mean, we all know really at the end of the day, the English market is actually quite volatile. And where the Scottish market seems to continually go up in a nice smooth graph from 1984, you look at house prices all the way. I mean, you do have the blip for the credit crunch, but it's not as significant in terms of the volatility of what England actually gets and what the local market gets here as well. So the concept behind this is that the more expensive house prices in the south drop lower prices in the rest of the UK. Why? Because the more expensive regions have, by definition, more expensive house prices, meaning that the homeowners have higher mortgages. Makes sense? So if they become unemployed, their homes are more likely to be repossessed because of the higher mortgages. And consequently, this reduces the house prices that are in the area quicker, because repossessed houses tend to sell much more cheaply compounded and compared to the normal house sales. I mean, we saw that in the last credit crunch. I mean, I couldn't believe it how some of the house prices here were instantly downgraded by £10,000 just because you had no guarantee on the electrics and the services. And yet, literally, it was going in and switching them back on, and you were back in business. That's really what it was like. And so the health of the Fife property market in 2021 and beyond really depends on what is happening to the economy as a whole, and more specifically, what is happening to the Fife economy. Now, hi Shirley, thanks for watching. So this is probably for everybody actually. Good morning. What about stamp duty if you already have a residential mortgage or have a portfolio of properties? Kester, probably that one's for you.
So what do you think the question is? What's going to happen to stamp duty, or?
Well, I think what about stamp duty if you already have a residential mortgage or portfolio of properties? In other words, will you have to pay ADS? I think this is, Shirley, possibly. You could clarify me on this. I've got a funny feeling Shirley's saying, will I have to pay additional dwelling supplement if I'm moving from my residential property, my primary place, to the next one?
Yeah, so yeah, the answer is if you're keeping hold of the existing property, then yes, you do. But if you do sell your main residence and then move into a new main residence, then you don't have to pay the additional dwelling supplement. If you're buying additional properties, then you do have to pay the 4%. The only way around that is if you buy 6 in one go, and then you don't have to pay the 4% additional dwelling supplement, or buy something below £40,000.
Yeah, the 6 in one go, I'm going through that myself just now. It's a huge saving doing 6 in one go, which is probably why most investors are actually looking for portfolio landlords to offload, because the ADS is obviously significantly lower.
That on top of the current stamp duty holiday as well, so the two together. So if you can get the 6 in one go, you're not paying either potentially.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So, Andrea, thanks for your question. It'll be interesting to see if the poor Brexit deal with regards to the fishing industry will affect the East Neuk housing market. I have a sneaking suspicion. Jimmy, maybe your comment on the East Neuk housing market. What's your thoughts on that then? The fishing rights have actually been cut back clearly. I think that's now well known. And apparently we're supposed to get all this back in the next 5 years. But Andrea's saying, do you think that'll affect the East Neuk housing market if the fishing rights have actually been, and will it affect it at all, really?
No.
I knew you were going to say that. Can you elaborate on that a wee bit, Jimmy?
The fishing market is just such it's a small part of why the people want to live in the East Neuk, and why people are wanting to relocate there from places like Edinburgh, Glasgow, or people want to go holidays into the East Neuk or buy their second home there. So I actually know I got a few friends that are in the fishing market in the East Neuk, and I can't see it. There are a lot of them are all local there as well, so they'll stick together and support each other through it. I'm sure about that as well, because that's sort of the East Neuk is like a family and togetherness community. So I can't see it affecting it. No.
That is one of the great things about the East Neuk area. They are very committed to each other. I mean, there's generations of people that have been there for years and years and years. And almost like you're an outsider if you know about 3 generations in. But they do stick together, and they do look after each other, and they do make sure they promote each other and help each other through general crisis. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. Knowing a few of them myself, yeah, I would agree with you. I don't see it being any effect at all.
Yeah, perfect. Shirley, yes, you're absolutely welcome. Didn't know about the 6 property exemption. I will look that up. You can get in touch with myself and get in touch with Kessa. We know about this because obviously I'm going through it. Kessa knows about it for his landlords as well. So it is a good thing to capitalise on the averaging system. You will save a significant amount of money in terms of ADS, second home stamp duty, as a result of that. So let's look at these numbers again. When we drill down through the unemployment has hit different sectors of the economy to lesser or greater extent. For example, office workers, people who work in tech, sciences and professional services, the impact on jobs have been comparatively mild, with many personnel able to work from home, ourselves included. Yet for others, such as those who work in hospitality, leisure, retail, entertainment and the catering industry, remote working is simply not an option, as these have been hit the hardest. You've got to feel for the hospitality industry. I mean, it's like, geez. I mean, I'm surprised anybody is still standing. Is anybody, what about everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the local businesses around here, Jim, I mean, I know some of them, you know some of them, they have been hit hard, and it's a shame. And that's just like I was saying, obviously, there's different sectors are affected in different ways. I mean, obviously, housing's been quite successful through this. But then obviously like the hospitality side of things and that, they've been hit quite hard. And you could see that, and obviously knowing some of them personally, and knowing obviously the struggles that they're going through, it's been quite difficult.
Well, I mean, I run a business, I run offices and all the rest of it, and I know the costs that are involved in that.
Yeah.
And just because you say somebody's on furlough, it doesn't mean to say, I mean, what pays the rent? What pays the electricity? What pays the gas? What pays your water rates? What pay, all these things. And it's all telecoms. I'm in 5-year deals with BT. So if anything happens to me, it's like, we're not giving you any leeway. It's like you're still got to pay your bills.
Still got
The reality is, and furlough doesn't pay for that. So while furlough's taking over a proportion of the cost, they're not taking over all the significant costs that are still there.
Yeah, I think more needs to be done to support them, really.
I would say so as well. Unfortunately, the industries mentioned in these are the ones that tend to employ a younger generation who invariably live in the private rented accommodation. I think this is coming back to what you're saying, Jimmy. Rather than own their own home, being made redundant puts their dream of buying their first home back even further as they try and get themselves back onto their feet by initially finding a job, let alone save for a deposit. This comes back to you, Kessa. When you think about it, first-time buyers, as far as I'm concerned, are the lifeblood of the housing market. They feed the whole thing. So, what is available for first-time buyers just now, and what is coming through?
Yeah, I mean, the government are very conscious of this as well, especially kind of all the way through this. They've kind of realised that first-time buyers are very important. We obviously had the Great First Home Fund scheme, which obviously the money ran out of very, very quickly. That's due to come back in April again next year. So that will help a lot of first-time buyers out.
What is the First Home scheme for the benefit of people watching?
Yeah, so it's all a Scottish only based scheme where you can get a £25,000 loan, which is interest free for the lifetime that you take that loan out. It's not means tested in any way either. So basically, you can take 25,000 and you can use that towards your deposit. So typically, you only need to put them 5% deposit of your own. 25,000 you can use interest free from the government, and they then take an equity share in the property. So whatever 25,000 then becomes of the value of the property, whenever you sell that property in the future, then they'll just take the equity share at that point. So it's a fantastic scheme that's available, and it's available to any type of property. It doesn't have to be new builds either.
Yeah. Do you know my first mortgage was 20,000? That could have paid for the whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. And giving you some money back on top.
It's amazing when you think about it. The schemes that are this scheme to me is a great scheme for first-time buyers. Do you not think though it possibly might exacerbate the housing market and overheat it in times where it's not necessary? I mean, it might help now, but do you not think it might overheat it? But continue to use this fund and this system?
Well, it's only on a yearly basis, so I suppose if that was the case, then they can always restrict it, and the funds are limited. So this year they put additional funds in because they saw the need due to COVID. So if it does overheat the market, they can potentially just either withdraw it or when the funds run out, just not renew it. Sorry to interrupt, Jim. There's also Boris Johnson said as well that he's kind of talking about some sort of scheme as well that'll be available for the whole of UK. He's not really kind of elaborated on what it'll be exactly, but there's potentially
Angela, who believes Boris Johnson?
Well,
no one.
That's true. Yeah.
I know exactly what you said. He said, you know, we're going to get 95% for first-time buyers. You know, absolutely. I'm almost imitating him here. That for me just fell on deaf ears because I thought I'll believe it when I see it. You know, that's really what it comes down to. You know, but it'd be great if it came back. There's other ways to stimulate the market, though. I mean, there's other ways, like you could take away the 4% ADS. You know, that would make a huge impact on the lower end of the market because we all know as buy-to-let landlords and investors, we tend to buy lower value because there's a higher return on that, you know, in terms of it. But it doesn't mean to say because we buy lower value, we're going to have less, less standard properties, if that makes sense. You know, even lower value properties can be done up to really high quality. I mean, you know that yourself, Kesa, with some of the people investing in Aberdeen. You know, they're buying them at really good values now, and they're putting in really top quality kitchens, top quality luxury bathrooms. They're doing that in Dundee as well, aren't they?
Yeah, all over Scotland. I mean, typically property investors do tend to buy things below the sort of 150,000 mark where there's enough yield there to get a good rental and then potentially capital growth as well. So, but I can't see the Scottish Government reducing the ADS personally. I've
been relentless with them. Nobody knows that, but I've been emailing Kevin Stewart and a local MP as well all the time. And I almost got the point that I think she's made a block on me.
There's another interesting stamp duty cut at the moment potentially for foreign investors, Jim. In Scotland, in England, they're bringing in a 2% duty as of I think it's April, but that's not going to be in Scotland. So I don't know if you're going to see potentially more foreign investors buying up in Scotland as well.
But the foreign investors actually buy in Scotland. I mean, you know, personally, I've never seen any foreign investor buying where we are. And we have St Andrews on our doorstep, so I've not seen that. I have heard the foreign investors buying in that area, but they tend to be people who have actually moved. So they've gone out to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or overseas because they work there and they live there now, so they're domiciled there for tax purposes. Will they be deemed to be a foreign investor as well if they're domiciled for tax purposes?
I've not looked at all the small print, but I'd imagine that, they would be. If for tax purposes they're in the other country, then I'd imagine that, they'd be classed as foreign investors. But there are a lot of people that do have links to Scotland. You know, I get a lot of calls from foreign investors, like you said, especially in kind of the Gulf states and stuff like that, that still want to invest in Fife. So, maybe we might see an increase in that in the future.
Yeah, so we've always got that. I mean, to me, I always say you've always got that in your armament if you need it. At a last resort. That's kind of where I'm thinking, and that's why I keep badgering on the Scottish Government about you do have this, so please make sure you use that tool if you need to simulate the market. I mean, the last thing overall is anybody wants to have is a housing crash, because a housing crash then restricts supply, and then it stops everybody buying, you know, and credit crunch comes into play. I mean, you know about that as well, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And nobody wants a repeat of 2008. So the government is very conscious of that. I think the key thing that we have just now, especially when it comes to lending, is that, you know, the lending is still there, and the government have kind of made sure that will kind of stay there. A lot of the quantitative easing that's happened, that has given additional capital adequacy to the banks. So we're not seeing that restriction, at least. So hopefully that won't be a factor.
Absolutely. So housing markets will recover quickest in towns and cities, where jobs are at the most resilient employment sectors. For example, in London, unemployment jumped really quick and high in 2009 with the credit crunch, yet came down just as quick in 2011, just as the property market in London started to take off again, whilst in Fife, it took a lot longer for unemployment to drop. And the Fife property market really didn't start to get going until 2013, 2014. I mean, I think we saw that right across Scotland in general, you know, it's because it tends to be like that. So if we have a determined economic contraction with the lengthier and leisurely economic recovery impeded by financial stress, that will lead to a much higher unemployment in the 10 to 12% range in the summer of 2021. However, before I get to the initial question, I need to highlight another interesting fact, because really what particularly is interesting is the increase in unemployment in Fife amongst men had been higher than women, with the growth of 3.2% percentage points for men compared to 2 percentage points with women. So women tend to be employed a lot better than men. Is that right across the board? I've always thought that women are better workers than men, but I maybe shouldn't say that publicly.
And that's an interesting start. That I wouldn't have thought that would be the figure. But that's obviously probably reflective of where their employment is coming from, maybe, I think. I don't know, what do you think?
Maybe that comes back down to hospitality sectors and office jobs. You know, you tend to find a lot more women end up in admin, office jobs, accountancy, stuff like that as well. Or I've seen that over the years. You know, when I was in my class for accountancy, you know, there tended to be a lot more women there than there did men in terms of that. So I don't know if has anybody else seen that right in their sort of you know, in their environment? Kessler, have you seen that?
Not particularly, no, but obviously there's still a lot of inequality when it comes to kind of the workplace as well. So maybe the type of jobs that these guys have, you know, that just are not there at the moment. So I'm not quite sure. I'm not seeing it myself.
It probably is the mix when you think about it. So what is the prediction for the Fife property market under the cloud of this growth in unemployment? Well, one massive redeeming factor is that could save the Fife property market is low interest rates. You know, that will continue, wouldn't it, Kessler?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can't see interest rates getting increased anytime soon. You know, even within the next sort of 5 years. You know, or if they do, it'd be very small increments.
I'm even daily saying even the next 10 years. You know, and when you think about it, it's almost a ticking time bomb when you think about the logic of this. Because if interest rates does get increased in 5 to 10 years, and you have 5-year mortgages fixed at 2.99, or 10-year mortgages fixed at 2.99 or 3%, and interest rates start to go up and up and up, what would happen to these people once the interest rate come out of that deal? You know, because interest rates are now up, and that'll go back into variable rate. You know, I mean, that's almost a ticking time bomb when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know where that'll lead to eventually, but there's generations of people out there now who have never seen higher interest rates than, you know, what we've got at the moment. So they just couldn't even, you know, afford for mortgages to increase. So, and I think the government's very conscious of that.
One of the other things I think about as a ticking time bomb is student debt. You know, after 25 years, apparently it gets written off if it's no call back, and it's like I wonder how much they've actually got to write off. It's something I'm probably going to look into after 25 years. I wonder how much they would have to write off if that was the case. You know, because you only claw it back on certain rates. I think it's up to if they earn below 80% of the income level, they don't claw it back apparently. So it's another thing that actually I'll probably look into in the future as we come closer to that time. So one of the massive redeeming factors in the Fife property market is the low interest rates, as I said. This will keep mortgage payments low, meaning repossessions should be kept to a minimum. Again, I think even if it came to that, I think the government would step in and actually stop that happening. I don't think they would. I think we've learnt a lot of lessons out of the credit crunch. I mean, Richard, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this before, Jim, and yeah, I don't think they're going to let things get to a point where we, like you say, we've learnt lessons in the past. The government's learnt lessons in the past about how bad things could get. So I think they'll be quite cautious not to let us get to a point where things are going to be that bad again.
I mean, when you think about the logic of this, if the mortgage payments are kept to low, meaning repossessions be kept to a minimum, therefore there shouldn't be a flood of cheaply priced properties coming onto the market at the same time and dragging Fife house prices down with it, as it did with the previous 2 recessions in 2009 and 1989. Most of you guys will remember the recession in 1989.
I don't remember that one, no.
This is when I think about my age. During the war. Yeah, irrespective of the ultra low interest rates, I still consider property prices in Fife at Christmas 2021 won't be much different from today. And the fact that they could be slightly lower. I'm actually thinking as well that possibly we might, because of the things that we don't know just now, I think by the time of the end of this year, property prices could be as much as 4% higher. and that's because the government will continue to step in and prop up the market. And it's almost, I don't know how you see it. How do you see it overall, Kessa? I mean, how do you see how things are going so far? You know, if you were to put an analogy on it, if you could, how would you see it?
Yeah, exact same way that you're. I mean, I'm going to put my neck out on the line. I personally think, a year down the line, we're going to see property prices have actually increased again, and potentially at similar rates that we've had even this year. Because I deal with a lot of property investors. Some are waiting for kind of, April sort of time when furlough will extend. But, even at that point, like we've already discussed, that I think the government will kind of step in at that point and help out again. We might see stamp duty get extended as well. But overall, the property market, I personally feel for myself, is going to continue to kind of increase and go on. You talked about kind of the southeast, I think property prices there have already softened a wee bit and, will continue to do so. A lot of people don't necessarily need to live in the southeast of England anymore. But areas like Fife, which are kind of prime, you talked about kind of areas like East Neuk and stuff like that, where, there's kind of a slower pace of life and, beautiful scenery on your doorstep. More people are looking to kind of live in areas like that. So I'm quite confident about kind of the whole of the Scottish market in general, to be honest.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, Jimmy?
Well, on the results that we've achieved this year, once they become available to the public and other agents and all the other surveyors, etc., and they start realising the prices that we've achieved, obviously that's going to be affect home report values for new properties that are coming on the market in New Year. And obviously when they become available to the public, that's what they're going to be expecting to achieve. And obviously buyers are going to see what we've been achieving in that area as well. So ultimately, when they see other people recently paying those prices, they're going to know it's worth that. So, and maybe even pay a bit more because they want to be in that area of stuff like lockdown continues, etc., etc. They're going to want to move more.
That is a big thing, isn't it? Because I get that time and time again sometimes where a buyer will come along and say, well, the one next door sold for that amount and this sold for this. And it's like, well, the one that we've got up the street sold for a lot more than that. And that's why this is priced at this one now. And once that comes, exactly right, once that comes through, that will then start to push the home report values up again because surveyors will see it. That's a concluded price. And it's cast iron now because all the home reports are based on historical information, whereas it's a completely different market in terms of England's all based on what are stage and things, whereas we're based on what the actual facts are. Facts and figures. That's really what it comes down to. So you're absolutely right. Richard, what about yourself? What are you thinking? Predictions for this year?
Yeah, I agree with Jimmy. I think obviously knowing a lot of the results that we've had this year, as they transpire and the people are able to see what has been actually achieved, and like you say, the actual concluded prices of things, it will push things forward and push things up as we go into this year. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is because people are paying top dollar in the last 6 months to secure their dream home in Fife. Quite often spending the money they've saved on the stamp duty for the purchase price. I mean, in Scotland, really, it's up to £2,100. That's the only additional benefit you're getting. You're not getting the £500,000, which goes into a different stamp duty threshold. Some people in England are saving £16,000, £17,000, £18,000, whereas Scotland, the maximum you can get is £2,100 out of the stamp duty saving up to £250,000. So it's not going to break the bank here. But when stamp duty returns in April, though, in 2021, there will be less money to pay for the property. Thus, Fife property values will be, by implication, lower in a year's time. But possibly they won't because everything else that's coming through and what I said before. So it's a bit of swings and roundabouts. But again, hands up who thinks stamp duty is going to be extended.
Yeah.
I see that as well, eh? This brings me on, though, interestingly, to the Fife landlords and their rents. So nationally, rents fell just over 2.3% between 2008 and 2010, following the credit crunch. Well, national, and this is quite interesting because I remember in the credit crunch, we were getting more rent than we were getting now for properties in Fife. Some of them I've got. That's interesting. But then I think that's because a lot of people flooded the market and actually filled all the properties with rental properties, and they've just any price will do. That's what I think has driven the market here and driven it down. I mean, while national house prices as well had fallen 15.9%, the rents had only decreased 2.3%. So I anticipate Fife rents will also remain comparatively robust. in the coming months and years. I mean, there's still always a demand. I mean, we know it ourselves. They're not building enough. They're not building enough houses. We need 25,000 a year.
Yeah, they're definitely not meeting. Yeah, they're definitely not meeting the obviously the figures with the housing, and that obviously you can see that in the rental sector, obviously, and there's such a high demand just now, and we've been continually for the last, obviously, the majority of the last year, fighting this supply and demand problem. Now, as soon as we're bringing properties on, the amount of demand we're getting for potential tenants and things is just unreal, and that's what's pushing the rental prices up as well, because we're able to and people are willing to pay more as well for property because they're in such a low supply.
Yeah, I mean, rents are really tied to the rise and fall of wage growth when you think about it. So
Yeah.
I can't see the relationship shouldn't continue. Rents will rise in Fife between, I think, 13 and 15% in the next 5 years. I think they'll continue to go up now because we're going to see this bounce. Yet if property prices do rise in 2023 and 2024, that means future rental yields will be marginally lower in 2023 and 24 comparative to today, especially as ultra low interest rate expectations, well, according to money markets and ourselves, seem to be here to stay for a long time. You know, I mean, I think we are 5 to 10 years. Therefore, something tells me that there could be some interesting Fife buy-to-let investment opportunities for Fife investors, Dundee as well, and right across Scotland, willing to pay the Fife buy-to-let market and play it for the long term. I mean, this is a long game, isn't it, Kessa?
Yeah, absolutely. Always has been. It's never kind of a get rich quick scheme. So absolutely, but you know, we've seen this year the local housing allowance rates being increased in Fife. You know, quite big jumps, you know, especially for 4-bedroom property, 3-bedroom properties in particular. So I'm seeing a lot of investors now starting to invest in those types of properties. But yeah, and definitely rent prices have increased overall. You know, whether it's on the professional or if it's on kind of benefit tenants. And if we're renting out to kind of the type of people that might be affected, you know, when sort of furlough finishes, you know, hospitality and stuff like that, we always have kind of the local housing allowance rates to kind of fall back on just in case they do lose their jobs. And ultimately, then rents are quite good just now as well. So you might take a little bit of a drop in income, but not a huge amount. And we've already seen that rents have stayed fairly stable through kind of COVID as well, where we was all worried right at the beginning that there'd be lots of defaults. We've not really kind of seen that happen across the board. So I'm quite positive, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So Phil says willing or having to pay more rent. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of people that, like you say, Kester, obviously the local housing allowance rate and things increasing is quite good because that obviously that's a fallback for people that maybe do find themselves unemployed. And also what I found as well, there was a big expectation of people, a lot of people coming forward and being a lot of defaults. And I mean, we have seen it, but not to the extent that I thought we were going to. I think a lot of people have been able to sustain themselves throughout, whether that be through furlough or staying in employment and things. So it's not been as bad as what the expectation was. And I think that's what we spoke about in previous shows, that there's been so much predictions about things that haven't really transpired as they thought they would.
Yeah, guys, that's almost an hour already. Jimmy, your final thoughts on this, just to round up on the whole thing.
Just speak to experts about whatever you've got planned for the future. More than happy. Well, I'm sure everybody's more than happy to help. So just get all the facts and information that you need to make the best decision you can for yourself and your future, really.
Probably as well, stop watching the news.
I know, we keep saying that. I think it's stop watching the news.
Kester, what about yourself? What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, definitely stop watching the news. That's the biggest one, absolutely. I think there's a lot of schemes that are kind of coming into place just now. So I'm taking on a young guy from Glenothes actually at the moment, and you know, we've got the Kickstart scheme starting, you know, and a lot of other schemes where, especially for young people under the age of 24, the government are helping, you know, towards kind of transport costs. You know, could be kind of even driving lessons, equipment, and lots of different things. So there is a lot of opportunities, and even as we saw in sort of 2008, a lot of people went self-employed at that point. So we might see a lot of people start to kind of start their own businesses, you know, during this time as well. So as much as this kind of uncertainty, there's definitely opportunities there as well for people.
Yeah, I mean, small business is the lifeblood of our economy. I mean, I don't, for anybody out there, if you lose your job, Just start up and small. Start your business. Start a business. There is always opportunity out there. I can guarantee you that. If you ever need help with that, come to me, message me, and I'll probably help you identify the market you want to look at and the business you want to start, just to get you going again. You know, you don't need to be in despair about the fact that you've lost your job. It makes no difference. Lose my job, next. Who's next? Move on, get a job, or start your own business. Really, that's what it comes down to. And you can do that easily. Again, message me direct here. Richard, what's your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, the interesting thing I was going to say there, obviously, about Jimmy's saying about speaking to experts and things, and I think the self-employed thing is something that I've seen come around in conversation quite a lot, about people having concerns about, obviously, they're self-employed, I'm not going to be able to get a mortgage now, obviously, depending on what sector their profession is in, but I think it's always important to speak to people like yourself, Kessler, or even yourself, Jim, as well, to get that advice or even pointed in the right direction, of where to obviously go with, whether it be if they're having problems and they're trying to get a mortgage or get onto the property market or even set up their business in general. That is one thing I have had in conversation a few times over the last wee while. So,
absolutely. I mean, to conclude, really, these are all just my personal opinions, and that's all we've done here. If you're a Fife landlord looking for advice or an opinion of what you want to buy to maximise your returns, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, you know, because there is opportunities out there. If you're a Fife homeowner looking to buy or sell and need advice and an opinion of where the market is, and if your Fife home sits where it sits in the bigger Fife market, then please feel free to drop us a line. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But I would always say, most importantly, it's what we come back to saying, for God's sake, stop watching the news, because the news is just doom and gloom, and it's designed to get you sucked in. It's almost like clickbait in terms of that. So with that, guys, thanks very much for watching, Charlotte, Andrea, Shirley, thanks for asking your questions as well, and Phil, you know, thanks for watching as well. And that's it, guys. That's it for this week. And thanks to you guys. Thanks to Jimmy Mullen. Thank you very much, Jimmy, for coming on the show. Thanks, Kessler.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks, Richard. And bye from me. I'm going to do my property roundup tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So if everybody's wanting to tune into the Fife Property Market and the property roundup tomorrow night, I've got some facts and figures and information, which is actually I've not discussed on here, which is key to knowing what you need to do in 2021. So I'll see everybody on tomorrow night on the Fife Property Weekly Update at 7 o'clock on Sunday night. And bye for now, guys.